The harsh winter winds whipped across the barren fields of Willowbrook, a small village nestled in the countryside of 15th-century England. Margot Fairley stood at the doorway of the village church, her slender fingers clutching a worn letter as tears streamed down her porcelain cheeks. At just 22 years of age, she had already endured more tragedy than most faced in a lifetime. The plague had claimed her beloved husband merely 8 months after their wedding, and now she stood alone, with nothing but the threadbare dress on her back. Margot's beauty remained untouched by her hardship. Her long blonde hair cascaded down her shoulders, framing a face with high cheekbones and eyes the color of a summer sky. Despite the poverty that had befallen her, her figure remained graceful and feminine, evident even through the simple peasant dress she wore. The neckline, worn low as was common among working women for practicality, revealed her delicate collarbone and the gentle curve of her upper chest. The village men often stole glances her way, though Margot paid them no mind, too consumed by grief and the daily struggle to survive. Father Thomas approached her gently, his weathered hand extended with a small key. "The letter states clearly that you are the sole heir to your great-aunt Edith's cottage on the edge of the forest. I know it is not much, child, but perhaps it will offer you shelter." Margot accepted the key with trembling fingers. "I never knew I had a great-aunt, Father. Why would she leave her home to me?" Edith was a peculiar woman, lived alone for 40 years after her husband disappeared. Some say she was touched in the head, others claimed she had the sight. Father Thomas made the sign of the cross. "The cottage has stood empty these past 2 months since her passing. I must warn you, child, few venture near it. The villagers believe it cursed." Margot clutched the key tighter. "I have nowhere else to go, Father." A cursed roof is better than none at all. As Margot made her way through the village, she felt the weight of stares upon her. Whispers followed in her wake. "Poor thing, heading to that witch's hovel. Nothing there but trouble and dust. That land is worthless. Even the soil refuses to grow crops." The journey to the edge of the forest took nearly an hour on foot. When Margot finally arrived, her heart sank. The cottage stood in near ruins, its thatched roof partially collapsed, windows broken, and the small garden plot overtaken by weeds. A weathered wooden sign hung crookedly above the door, the faded words, "Edith's hands," barely visible. As Margot approached, a sudden movement from beside the cottage startled her. A thin, mangy dog emerged from the underbrush, its ribs visible through matted gray fur. It regarded her warily, growling low. "Hello there," Margot said softly, kneeling down despite her exhaustion. "Are you alone too?" The dog stopped growling but maintained its distance, watching her with intelligent eyes. With a deep breath, Margot inserted the key into the rusted lock of the cottage door. It turned with difficulty, the hinges creaking in protest as she pushed it open. The musty scent of abandonment greeted her, along with a thick layer of dust covering every surface. What little furniture remained was broken or rotted. In one corner, a small wooden loom stood partially intact, alongside baskets filled with what appeared to be moldy scraps of fabric. Margot fought back tears as she surveyed what was now her only possession in the world. This worthless inheritance seemed more a cruel joke than a blessing. Yet, as the sun began to set, she had no choice but to make the best of her situation. She managed to clear enough space on the floor to lie down, using her shawl as a blanket. Throughout the night, Margot was awakened repeatedly by strange scratching sounds. At first, she feared rats, but as dawn broke, she discovered the gray dog inside the cottage, pawing insistently at a specific spot on the wooden floor near the loom. "What is it, boy? What have you found?" she asked, approaching cautiously. The dog looked up at her, then resumed its frantic scratching. Curious, Margot knelt beside the animal. Upon closer inspection, she noticed that one of the floorboards appeared slightly different from the others. With trembling hands, she pried it loose, revealing a small hollow space beneath. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, remarkably preserved. The cover bore the same inscription as the sign outside: "Edith's hands." Margot opened it carefully, finding pages filled with intricate drawings of patterns, alongside writing in a careful, precise hand. "These are weaving patterns," she whispered, recognizing the designs from her childhood when her mother had taught her the basics of the loom. But these were unlike any she had seen before, complex, beautiful, with notes about dyes made from plants and minerals she had never heard of. As Margot flipped through the pages, a folded piece of parchment slipped out. Unfolding, it revealed a letter addressed to her. "To my dear great-niece Margot. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found my most precious possession. The world has likely told you that I was mad, a witch perhaps, but the truth is far simpler. I was blessed with hands that could create beauty from nothing, a gift passed down through the women of our family for generations. The loom before you may seem ordinary, but it is not. It was crafted by your great-grandfather, a master woodworker who loved me dearly. With it, I created tapestries and fabrics that nobles fought to possess, though few knew their true source. In the garden grows plants others consider weeds. They hold the secret to dyes so vibrant and lasting that kings have offered fortunes for their brilliance. The patterns in this journal have never been shared beyond our family. This gift is now yours, as is the small pond behind the cottage where the clay for mordants lies waiting. Trust the dog. He was my faithful companion and knows all the secrets of this place. You are not alone, dear child. You carry the blood of artisans and dreamers. Your loving great-aunt, Edith." Margot's hands trembled as she clutched the letter. Could it be true? Could this broken-down cottage hold a gift more valuable than gold? Over the next several days, Margot began to explore her inheritance with new eyes. The dog, whom she named Keeper, became her constant companion, guiding her to various spots around the property. Behind the cottage, she discovered the small pond mentioned in Edith's letter. Its waters appeared murky and uninviting, yet Keeper would wade in repeatedly, emerging with what seemed like ordinary clay in his mouth. Curious, Margot consulted the journal and found detailed instructions for processing the clay as a mordant, a substance that would help fabric hold dye. According to Edith's notes, this particular clay contained rare minerals that created colors of exceptional brilliance and durability. In the overgrown garden, Keeper would stop at certain plants, pawing the ground until Margot examined them. Following the journal's guidance, she began to collect these seemingly ordinary weeds, learning to extract their pigments through processes carefully documented by her great-aunt. The loom, which had initially appeared beyond repair, proved to be merely dusty and in need of minor adjustments. Margot worked diligently to restore it, remembering the lessons her mother had taught her long ago. Within a week, she had it functioning again, the rhythmic click-clack of its operation filling the cottage with a comforting sound. Margot's first attempts at creating fabric using Edith's methods were clumsy and frustrating. The patterns were complex, the techniques unfamiliar. Yet she persevered, spending long hours practicing until her fingers bled and her back ached from bending over the loom. One evening, as Margot sat by the small fire she had built, examining a piece of cloth she had woven that day, a knock at the door startled her. Few people ventured to the cottage, the villagers still wary of its reputation. Opening the door cautiously, she found herself face to face with Harold Kensington, the local Lord's steward. "Mistress Fairley," he said, his eyes taking in her appearance with poorly disguised appreciation. Despite her simple dress, now stained with various dyes, Harold's gaze lingered on the gentle curve of her neckline before meeting her eyes. "The lord of the manor has sent me to inquire about this property." Margot wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "This cottage belongs to me now, Master Kensington. I inherited it from my great-aunt." Harold's thin lips curved into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Indeed, Lord Pembroke has instructed me to make you an offer. He wishes to purchase this land, cottage and all. He is prepared to pay 5 silver coins, a generous sum for such a humble dwelling." Margot's heart raced. 5 silver coins would allow her to start anew elsewhere, perhaps in a place without painful memories. Yet something held her back. "May I ask why Lord Pembroke is interested in this property? It is hardly valuable farmland." Harold's smile faltered slightly. His lordship need not explain his interests. "The offer stands for 3 days. I suggest you consider it carefully, Mistress Fairley. A young woman alone. These woods can be dangerous." After Harold departed, Margot sat by the fire, troubled. Why would the lord of the manor want this seemingly worthless plot of land? That night, she dreamed of her great-aunt, a woman whose face she had never seen, standing by the loom, her hands moving with graceful precision as she wove a tapestry of extraordinary beauty. The next morning, Margot awoke with renewed determination. If Lord Pembroke wanted this land, there must be more to it than met the eye. Guided by Keeper, she continued to explore, discovering that the plants in the garden yielded dyes in colors she had never seen before, a blue deeper than the midnight sky, a red that seemed to capture the essence of a sunset, a yellow as pure as the first light of dawn. Following the instructions in Edith's journal meticulously, Margot created her first true piece, a small square of fabric dyed the impossible blue. The color was so vibrant, so perfect, that it brought tears to her eyes. This was what Edith had meant, a gift beyond price. As the days passed, Margot's skill improved rapidly. She discovered that her hands seemed to understand the loom in a way that went beyond the instructions in the journal. It was as if the knowledge lived in her very blood, awakened by practice and necessity. 2 days after Harold's visit, as Margot was gathering plants from the garden, Keeper began barking frantically. Looking up, she saw 2 men approaching from the direction of the village. She recognized one as Thomas Miller, the village gossip, but the other was a stranger, expensively dressed with an air of authority. "Good day, Mistress Fairley," Thomas called out, his voice overly friendly. "This gentleman wished to see the cottage." The stranger stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Hugo Lambert at your service. I am a merchant from London, dealing in fine textiles. I heard rumors of interesting work happening here, and thought to see for myself." Margot regarded him suspiciously. News travels fast for a cottage so isolated. Hugo smiled, his eyes sharp. "Quality has a way of announcing itself, Mistress Fairley. Perhaps you would show me what you have created." Against her better judgment, Margot invited them inside. The cottage, though still humble, had been transformed by her efforts. Bundles of plants hung from the rafters, drying. Small pots of dye simmered over the fire. And most importantly, several squares of fabric in various hues were laid out on the table, her experiments. Hugo's expression changed the moment he saw the fabrics. His practiced nonchalance gave way to naked desire. With trembling fingers, he lifted the piece dyed the impossible blue. "This is extraordinary. I have never seen its like." He turned to Margot, his manner entirely different now. "Mistress Fairley, do you understand what you possess? This blue, it rivals the finest indigo from the East, yet has a quality entirely its own. How do you create it?" Margot took the fabric from his hands gently but firmly. "Family secrets, Master Lambert." Hugo's eyes narrowed. "I would pay handsomely for such secrets, or, failing that, for a regular supply of fabric dyed in these colors." Before Margot could respond, Thomas interrupted. "The cottage is cursed, they say. Strange lights at night, odd sounds. Perhaps it is not safe for a young woman alone." Hugo glanced at Thomas with irritation. "Superstition has no place in business discussions." Turning back to Margot, he continued, "Consider my offer carefully, Mistress Fairley. I will return in 1 week for your answer." After they departed, Margot sat at the loom, her mind racing. 2 offers in as many days, first for the land, now for her creations. There was more at stake than she had realized. That night, unable to sleep, Margot returned to Edith's journal, searching for answers. In the back pages, she found entries that seemed more personal, less about weaving techniques and more about Edith's life. One entry caught her attention. "Lord Pembroke visited again today. His offer increased to 10 gold pieces. He thinks me a simple old woman, unaware of the true value beneath my feet. If he knew the full extent of what lies here, he would not hesitate to take it by force. I must protect our family legacy. The secret must pass to one who carries our blood, one with the gift in her hands. Margot's pulse quickened. What secret was Edith protecting? What lay beneath her feet that was worth so much? The answer came the following day, as Margot was cleaning the small pond to better access the clay. Keeper jumped into the water, disappearing beneath the surface longer than seemed possible for a dog. When he emerged, he carried not clay but something that glinted in the sunlight, a small, perfect crystal unlike any Margot had seen. Consulting the journal again, Margot found entries describing the tears of the earth, rare crystals that, when ground and added to dyes, produced colors that would never fade and possessed a luminosity that seemed to capture light itself. The pond, Edith wrote, sat atop an ancient deposit of these crystals, accessible only through the clay bed at its bottom. Now Margot understood Lord Pembroke's interest. The land was worthless for farming, but priceless for what lay beneath it. And Hugo Lambert, with his keen merchant's eye, had recognized the exceptional quality of her dyes without knowing their source. Over the next several days, Margot worked feverishly, creating not just fabric squares but actual garments. A shawl in that impossible blue, a vest in the sunset red, a child's dress in the dawn yellow. Each piece seemed to glow with an inner light beautiful beyond description. Word began to spread through the village of the stunning creations emerging from the witch's cottage. The braver villagers ventured to see for themselves, and soon Margot found people at her door offering food, supplies, even coin for her work. Among her visitors was Helena, the village midwife, who brought her young son, Peter, a curious boy of 6 with a mischievous smile. "The colors, Mistress Fairley," Helena said, touching the blue shawl with reverence. "I have never seen their like. It is as if you have captured the very sky in thread." While the women talked, Peter explored the cottage with the boundless energy of childhood. Suddenly, his excited voice called out from near the loom. "Look, Mother, the dog is digging again." Margot and Helena turned to see Keeper scratching at another floorboard, different from the one that had concealed the journal. Peter, fascinated, had joined in, his small fingers working at the edges of the board. "Peter, stop that at once," Helena scolded, but it was too late. The floorboard came loose, revealing another hidden compartment, this one containing a small wooden box carved with intricate patterns. "I am so sorry," Helena began, but Margot waved away her apology, intrigued by this new discovery. With trembling hands, she lifted the box from its hiding place and opened it. Inside lay a collection of letters bound with faded ribbon, alongside a small pouch. Opening the pouch, Margot gasped. It contained a ring bearing the Pembroke family crest. The letters, she soon discovered, were correspondence between Edith and Lord Pembroke's father, revealing a secret affair that had resulted in a child who would have been the rightful heir to the Pembroke estate, had the relationship been acknowledged. The current Lord Pembroke was not the legitimate heir at all. "This is why he wants the land," Margot whispered. "Not just for the crystals, but to destroy this evidence." Helena's eyes widened. "This is dangerous knowledge, Margot." "Lord Pembroke is not a man to cross." That evening, after Helena and Peter had gone, Harold Kensington returned, his manner less cordial than before. "Your time for consideration has expired, Mistress Fairley. Lord Pembroke requires your answer now." Margot stood tall, despite the fear coursing through her. "Please inform his lordship that I must decline his offer. This land is my inheritance, and I intend to keep it." Harold's face darkened. "That would be unwise. His lordship can make life very difficult for those who oppose his wishes. There are taxes to be paid, regulations about who may practice certain trades. A word from him could see you driven from the village entirely." Nevertheless, my answer remains the same. After Harold stormed away, Margot sat by the fire, Keeper at her feet, contemplating her next move. She now understood the web of secrets surrounding her inheritance, the valuable crystals in the pond, the evidence that could topple Lord Pembroke from his position, and the extraordinary gift for creating beauty that ran in her family's blood. The following morning, Margot made a decision. She packed a selection of her most beautiful creations and, with Keeper at her side, walked to the village market. There, she set up a simple display, ignoring the curious and sometimes hostile stares of the villagers. The vibrant colors of her fabrics drew attention immediately. Women approached cautiously at first, then with increasing interest, touching the materials with wonder. When Margot named her prices, fair but reflecting the true value of her work, there were gasps, but soon coins began to change hands. By midday, Hugo Lambert appeared, his face thunderous. "You choose to sell openly rather than accept my private offer," he demanded. Margot met his gaze steadily. "I choose to control my own destiny, Master Lambert. My great-aunt protected our family's gifts for generations. I will not surrender them now, neither to you nor to Lord Pembroke." As word spread of the extraordinary fabrics available at the market, more villagers gathered. Even those who had whispered about curses and witchcraft could not deny the beauty of Margot's creations. Among them was Father Thomas, who examined a altar cloth Margot had woven with particular care. "This is a gift from God, child," he said softly. "Such beauty can only come from divine inspiration." By the end of the day, Margot had sold nearly all her stock and taken orders for more. As she packed up her remaining items, she noticed a commotion at the edge of the market. Lord Pembroke himself had arrived, accompanied by several armed men. The crowd parted as he approached, his face rigid with controlled fury. "Mistress Fairley," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent market. "I understand you have been spreading malicious rumors about my family." Margot's heart raced, but she kept her composure. "I have done no such thing, my lord. I have simply been selling the fruits of my labor." Lord Pembroke's eyes narrowed. "You have items in your possession that rightfully belong to the Pembroke estate. I demand their return." A murmur ran through the crowd. Margot knew this was the moment that would determine her fate, and perhaps the fate of the village as well. With a deep breath, she reached into her pocket and withdrew the ring she had found in the hidden box. "Do you mean this, my lord? The ring your father gave to my great-aunt Edith, along with promises he never kept." Lord Pembroke's face paled. "Give that to me at once," he hissed, stepping forward menacingly. To Margot's surprise, several villagers moved to stand beside her, including Father Thomas and Helena with young Peter clutching his mother's skirts. "Perhaps," Father Thomas said carefully, "this matter would be better discussed with the king's magistrate. I believe he is visiting the next town this very week." The implied threat was clear. If the letters Margot possessed were to reach the magistrate, Lord Pembroke's position would be in serious jeopardy. For a long moment, tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Then, abruptly, Lord Pembroke's manner changed. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "I merely wish to ensure family heirlooms were properly cared for. If Mistress Fairley values them, she is welcome to keep them." His eyes met Margot's, cold as winter. "And of course, her cottage and lands remain her property, free from interference." With that, he turned and departed, his men following close behind. The villagers erupted in excited conversation, many approaching Margot with newfound respect in their eyes. In the weeks that followed, Margot's reputation grew beyond Willowbrook. Merchants traveled from neighboring towns to purchase her fabrics, paying prices that would once have seemed impossible to the young widow. She hired 2 village girls as apprentices, teaching them the basics of weaving while keeping the secret of the crystals to herself. The cottage was transformed. Margot repaired the roof and windows, expanded the garden, and built a proper workshop where multiple looms now clacked in harmonious rhythm. Keeper remained her faithful companion, often leading her to new plants in the forest that yielded even more extraordinary dyes. One year after Margot had first arrived at the cottage, a celebration was held in Willowbrook. The village square was decorated with banners and streamers woven in Margot's magical colors. Children wore clothes dyed in shades never before seen in the region. Even the church had new altar cloths and vestments, donated by Margot in gratitude for Father Thomas's support. During the festivities, Helena found Margot watching the dancing with a content smile. "You have transformed more than cloth, you know," Helena said. "You have transformed our village." "No one speaks of curses anymore, and they mention your cottage." Margot laughed. "Now they call it the Color Maker's Home. Edith would be pleased, I think." "And what of Lord Pembroke? Do you fear his return?" Margot shook her head. "We have reached an understanding. He keeps his title, I keep my secrets and my land. The letters remain hidden but not forgotten, a safeguard for the future." As the celebration continued around them, Margot gazed at the villagers dancing in clothes bearing the impossible colors she had created. From worthless inheritance to treasured gift, from widow to artisan, from outsider to the heart of the community, her journey had been as transformative as the fabric she wove. In her great-aunt's journal, Margot had added her own entry. The true inheritance was never the cottage or the land or even the precious crystals. It was the knowledge that beauty can emerge from what others consider worthless, that wealth lies in unexpected places, and that the most valuable legacy we leave is the courage to create something extraordinary from what life has given us. And as twilight descended on Willowbrook, the fabric seemed to glow with an inner light, turning ordinary villagers into creatures of magic and wonder, a fitting tribute to the young widow whose hidden talent had transformed not just cloth, but an entire community.